Hello everybody, we are live once again for the wonderful event of the TPN podcast. I'm joined here by my good old friend Tommy Bowyer.
Hello everyone.
Oh god.
It's good to be back.
We're back, so Tommy, So Tommy, what's the whole thing that's gonna the big topic of today? What we're gonna talk about? Of what's just been announced, the breaking news.
I was gonna say, well, a big thing was just announced a couple of minutes ago, and that is that the Senate have decided to acquit Donald Trump of all impeachment charges, which basically means Trump's not being removed from office anytime soon. And this was a significant deal. I mean, the Democrats have tried to do this for over 2 years, trying to impeach him and get him kicked out. And of course, everyone was saying that there was the Republican rebels like Mitt Romney who weren't going to side with Trump, and that meant that Trump was going to be, out of office. However, that turns out not to be the case. The Republicans have voted in the Senate to keep Trump in office. So basically, this is a massive setback for the Democrats, which I have to say have spent more time trying to impeach Trump than choose their nominee for the presidency in November. So I bet there's a lot of Democrats out there tonight who are really upset.
Yeah, we clearly saw this. We clearly saw this coming. Like, was Trump ever going to actually get removed from office from this vote? No, of course not. Like, the Senate was Republican controlled, and obviously, of course, Democrats didn't have a big substantial case to actually stand on. If I'm honest with you, of all the previous impeachment trials that there have been, that has happened. Yeah, this is probably the thing. It's the most minor impeachment case that's ever been in American history, to be honest with you.
Yeah, this has been a very poor impeachment case. It's basically, this all started because in the midterm Senate election, the Democrats managed to secure a majority in the House of Representatives, and unlike the UK, you have the Senate and then you have the House of Representatives. The Democrats had a majority in the House of Representatives. However, Republicans still held the Senate. So the Democrats now they had a majority in the House of Representatives, decided they'll push through these impeachment proceedings, hoping that certain moderate Republican senators, such as Mitt Romney, I keep bringing him up. However, he's the only moderate Republican senator I can really think of. However, it didn't push through, and I remember hearing on last night they were saying about, in the Senate especially, some Democrats who come from quite traditional working class backgrounds like Alabama and states like are actually thinking about voting against these impeachment proceedings because it will really harm the upcoming Senate election. So this has basically been the Democrats, and not all the Democrats either. These have been the Democrats in those very liberal areas who have decided to push through this impeachment proceeding in order to get rid of Trump. And quite frankly, if you ask me, voters, this helps strengthen Trump's cause, that he is a man of the people, and the establishment have tried to get rid of him, and they failed to get rid of him. So I think, if anything, this has boosted Trump's campaign already, because he's seen as a man of the people rather than the establishment Democrats, which are just trying to take him down from.
I mean, yes, to be honest, this has played perfectly into Trump's grasp in terms of the election upcoming. This played perfectly into Trump's grasp of essentially he's going to be able to use this in the next election. It's already been shown that Trump in the polls at the moment are seen as at a record high in the polls, and he's going to use this thing to further his agenda. And actually, I can see using this to his advantage. To be honest with you, I think the Democrats they played the impeachment hand too. They were very quick to try and get in there and try and find anything they can possibly do to try and impeach Trump. I think they've certainly done it way too soon, and right before the election, of which they were never going to remove him from office, and it's gone right in. It's right into Trump's hands.
Yeah, I think as you said, Trump gave a State of Union today, and it was a lot of him basically saying how great he was, uh, like most State of the Union address. However, he said, and he had some really good points. He said the economy is booming, unemployment is down, there's loads of poverty is going down, crimes going down, and America is starting to be respected in the world stage again. And that is very true. Because how many times, whenever there's any of these summits, um, everyone goes straight to Trump. You know, everyone says Trump, oh, he's an absolute catastrophe and he's making America look stupid. Why does every national leader go straight to Trump? Because he's made America a powerful force on the international stage again. And a lot of people globally don't like that. I know a lot of people in the UK don't like that, especially the media.
Yes.
So I think it's quite a scary thing. I think the Democrats have shot themselves in the foot with this. They basically think, well, we're going to impeach him, and now they've realised, shit, we got an election, and now he's ahead in the polls even more. So the
Yeah,
Democrats have really hurt themselves.
and it's funny since like I saw a big poll. It was like in the last 2 years, have you been more financially better off? Since Trump's got into power, over 59% of Americans said yes, that they're more well off since Trump's gotten into office.
Yeah, yeah, I think Trump's had an interesting presidency. I mean, from the BBC, you would have thought it's been a catastrophe over there. However, the economy's doing really well at the moment. As he said, unemployment and crime are way, and he satisfied the needs of the working class voters who elected him into that. Much like Boris Johnson was elected by the majority of working class northern voters, Trump's elected by the majority of uh, of American working class voters. He won several swing states which had strong working class voices, such as Pennsylvania, which used to go for the Democrats all the time. It's kind of like in the UK, the red wall always went to Labour. However, not anymore. Something across the world is changing. Working class voters are turning away from liberals and establishment figures, and they're going more for right wing pop who portray themselves as being for the common man, and I think that's a really good thing for the world. I don't know about you. I think that's a good
Um,
thing.
yeah, I suppose he's Trump's certainly gone with the America first of things. Now there might be things of with Trump where I disagree on him with some things, but in terms of the economy, he's been doing a really good job with it.
Yeah, he's done a really good job.
So it's possible with Trump. Um, to be honest, I can actually see him being elected for a second time because while I can't really say much on American politics because I'm not heavily invested in it, um, like just looking from some things I've heard from like especially like the Democrats from the Democrats story, at the moment like just from the Democrat side of things like they've been worse than Hillary Clinton so far.
Oh yeah, I mean at least Hillary Clinton came with name recognition. Half the Democrats running, and as Matthew said, I don't know a lot about American politics. However, I keep up to date on some of the candidates. Um, I mean, even when they had their Iowa caucus, which is like this first big primary thing, it's a massive. Trump's blown through his quite easily. Um, the Democrats have already received deadlock in their first state contest. There was no clear winner because the Democratic Party are that split between like the moderate wings and the progressive. And does that sound familiar? Yes, it does. It sounds exactly like the UK Labour Party and how that's split between the moderates and the so I wouldn't be surprised if the Democrats, I mean, obviously we can't predict the future and circumstances can change. However, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump wins the general election this November and the Democrats lose. And of course, the Democrats will probably blame the usual stuff, sexist people and Fox News. That's usually one they like blaming. I think it's a good time to be alive.
Yeah, certainly an interesting time in politics. Certainly, we've seen major changes in people's voting habits, how the whole political system works. To be honest with you, Trump, Brexit, well, which okay, you can't really compare the two exactly, but like just big phenomenons that people. So yeah, there's still everything to play for. So I still think Trump, to be honest, is going to get re-elected. If I'm honest with you, I just think people tend to vote more with their wallets than anything else. If I'm honest with you, if they're going to be better off, taxes, economy, and all that stuff, people are more likely going to vote with their wallets in the next election. And Trump, I think, has made people's wallets a bit better. To be honest with you.
Yeah, he's done. He's certainly the economy is improving a lot since he took office, and you can whether that's down to Trump or not, it is his policies which are helping America grow as a country again. And just look at some of the policies. A lot of people we only hear about the things like the so-called Muslim ban and things like that. However, a lot of Trump's main policy is a domestic agenda. He's got a quite significant domestic agenda. And of course, because we're the UK, we only ever hear about his foreign policy agenda, which isn't actually a bad foreign policy. I mean, he's opened up relations, well, temporarily at least, between America and North Korea. I mean, during Obama's tenure, who the hell would have thought that'd be possible?
Yeah.
So Trump has done some really good things, um, and he's got a very bold personality. So if the Democrats send someone up to nominate him who's kind of a wet blanket, who doesn't really stand for anything, then Trump's going to win because Trump's got passion and people vote for passion.
Yeah, so people certainly will vote for that. So, I don't know what else we can really say about Trump topic at the moment. So, Tommy, I want to move on to your next topic of well, briefly touch on Brexit. Well, as we talked about last time, we're now officially not members of the EU. But
Yeah.
the whole situation around Brexit and the time before Brexit, leading up to Brexit, there's a lot of things that were a bit unsure about, and things we want to like call out essentially. So, Tommy, I'm going to lead this into your topic.
Well, I'm going to start off at the end, and that's it will make sense. And that was yesterday morning. I was making my breakfast. I was making porridge, and the radio was on. It was BBC Five Live, and on that radio station they were saying, the Conservatives are threatening to pull the money from the BBC, and we've had hundreds of text messages and tweets in from you saying how we shouldn't get rid of the TV license and we should keep it and we love the BBC. So basically, they were making out like there weren't one single message which said, "Thank God for that. I hope we see the back of the BBC." And why have the Conservatives decided to review the TV license? Why do the Conservatives not like the BBC? Well, the BBC, and I'm not going to say BBC drama or the actors and actresses who appear in them, but that they don't really get involved. That
No.
I love Casualty and Hobby City, so they don't get involved. I'm talking about the presenters, like
Mm.
well, he doesn't work there anymore, but David Dimble, Fiona Bruce,
Yeah.
people like that, and they are some of the most biased people I have ever seen. And I have to, out of all the debates I've seen, all the Brexit coverage, the worst one I have ever seen is the BBC debate during the Conservative leadership
Yeah, that
election.
was pretty bad.
That was so biased that even liberals were calling out how biased the BBC was being on that one, because they had Labour support asking the Conservatives questions and then saying, "Oh, we're not voting for any. Yeah, we're voting." So
Yeah, they would
the
ask
part
him
I think,
questions, give him 20 seconds. They're like, nope, you've had your time. Shut up.
yep, the
When people there were about to get to their point.
and of course a lot of people say, "Oh well, maybe the BBC will start calming down and won't be so biased." Well, that's not true because the Conservatives are trying to pull the plug on the license fee, and the BBC don't like that, so they're going to run as much anti-conservative and anti-government propaganda as they can. I remember when all the elderly people were taking decided to boycott the BBC, and it was a pretty big news story. Did not appear on BBC News. The BBC are one of the most biased organisations in this country. And as I've said, I am not talking about BBC drama production because I class that as a completely separate
Yeah.
entity. It's more the BBC News, all of the presenters, all of the talk shows. Question Time has been called out on numerous occasions for how biased it is. It will have about 5 Labour politicians on there and
Yeah.
2 Conservative. And even audience members on Question Time call out on how biased. And when your audience start calling out how biased it is, what the hell is the point of even trying? I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Matthew. However,
Oh,
I say
I have
I'll
seen
pay.
it.
In my personal opinion, and I'll let you give your opinion. In my personal opinion, I would say I'm happy to pay the license fee. But I'll pay for the BBC drama license fee.
Yeah.
I'll pay for to see the shows I enjoy watching because I enjoy watching them and I hope they keep getting. So I will still pay it for that. I I would not like to think that any of my money is going towards the BBC News department and talk
Yeah.
shows because I don't pay to watch biased liberal propaganda. I just
No.
don't pay for it.
No. Just even general things of like their media coverage of the whole Brexit debate. It's always been more pro EU than anything. It's always anything to do with Brexit. They're always essentially talking down. You have the whole thing of like even their coverage before, instead of like their coverage of being, oh yeah, before we left the EU, of their newsroom, all the colours, all the symbols they were using. It's not like, yeah, we're proud that this is a time for Britain to shine. This is a time for Britain to go forward. It was no, let's just remind you of the EU and that the EU's this and that, instead of actually thinking like this is Britain, not a state of the EU.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, they spent most of their Brexit night coverage in Edinburgh with all of this, and fair enough, Scotland chose to remain uh, by vote, and they were having all these European wakes, they were calling them. However, they kind of just glossed over. They kind of said, "And here's all these wakes happening in Scotland. Oh yeah, and there's this Brexit celebration thing with Jiggy." Anyway, moving on. We got these wakes over here. The BBC and all of the presenters on Brexit night was actually quite funny. All of their faces were so glum.
Yeah.
The presenters really couldn't hide how depressed they were that we were leaving the EU. I
No.
mean, probably the only the least biased BBC news thing I've seen was election night
Yeah.
because
Well,
you
they
actually
legally
had.
have to be.
I know, but you actually had people like I know people might disagree. Laura Koonsberg, who's a good political editor, and they were actually giving like unbiased opinions.
Yeah.
Um, Everything else, I mean, the debates are an absolute joke for the BBC. The host is basically a participant. She'll
Yeah.
get involved and she'll be like, "Yeah, you've said your thing, but I was asking you about this," and they'll keep going. And in the end, I mean, the head-to-head debate between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, uh, Boris couldn't get a word in because the host kept speaking over her. She
Yeah.
said, "You got 10 seconds to answer this question." It's like 10 seconds to answer a question on the economy. What?
Yeah.
What? How can you reply in 10 seconds?
Hmm.
I've seen 7-way debates with more time to answer questions than that.
Yeah, there's the thing we criticise the BBC, but the BBC are not even the worst ones. And what I found are actually the worst news report coverage that actually has, well, should I say, that has the more bias, leaning towards the most biased ones, are the ones that are actually publicly owned. So, like, I find ITV's coverage is more better than the other offender, and that is Channel 4, which is also owned, publicly owned by the government as well.
Yeah, ITV, which is not a, are not biased a lot. I mean, I will watch a debate if it's on ITV
Yeah.
because they're usually not very biased. Channel 4 are quite biased in their opinions. I have to say a lot of. However, I have to say out of all the media about the biased ones and that, I think the worst one, which I never saw, was Sky News's election night coverage with John Burko.
I know.
And a lot of people were saying that that was one of the most biased coverage
Of course, it's
Sky
got
have ever
John Burke
done.
on it. Of course, it is.
Because you basically had John Burko
Yeah.
on there saying the country was making a very big mistake and they'll regret it. So honestly, you expect studios and TV channels to have certain leanings. Of course, the BBC, as we know, is quite liberal in its outlook.
Yeah.
And that's probably because of the whole nationalisation. Because technically, the BBC is kind of an industry because the government,
Or it's
we pay for
funded
it.
by the people.
Yeah, exactly. It's funded by the people. And as I've already said, the problem I have with BBC is the news because they are the biased ones. They're
Yeah.
the ones I don't know. I think they have a different boss in charge of them because the department, the drama production is actually not that. You might not like all the shows, however, they're usually biased.
Hmm.
Although I have to say that's starting to seep through now. That's starting to seep through slowly. Doctor Who, for example, is seeping through,
Yeah.
seeping through into that territory.
Um. Though, do I think the BBC as a service is worth 100 and it's going up in price now, 180 something like that a year? Of course it isn't. Everyone's forced to pay for it as well. It's not like your Netflix or your Amazon Prime where you have a choice whether you want to consume the content of what they offer. With the BBC, you have no say. And
And
I,
a lot of people think that the BBC, how they monitor programs, is based on view. That's not true. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, when a program's views drops below like 2 million, they can." That's not true.
no.
Never think that that is true. The BBC keep programs which they want to keep on, which they want to air. A lot. Why do you think you don't see half as many comedy programs produced by the BBC anymore? When was the last time you saw a comedy program on the BBC?
Ooh, we got Mrs. Brown's Boys.
Yeah, but I mean like a comedy program. You don't. I know. I didn't say there was no
What do you mean by
BBC.
comedy program?
Well, well, not so much a sitcom. That's the wrong word. But a lot. The BBC at one point had like loads of comedy
Oh yeah.
programs.
I mean, you had like Gavin and Stacey and all them ones back in the day running regular series.
Yeah, My Family
Yeah.
is a not as known one, but I used to watch that. It was a very good show.
Yeah.
I'd recommend it. But you hardly see any of them anymore, and coincidentally, a lot of them are cancelled for so stupid reasons. My Family was cancelled because it was considered too middle class. I mean, I don't know what the BBC thought that was about. But this is the problem. Never think that the BBC cancel a program because of views. It's
Yeah.
not based on views. One viewership might affect what slot it is. For
Hmm.
example, if it's a Saturday prime time slot or a just like a Thursday evening slot.
Yeah.
There are different, yeah. However, it's not based on views. The BBC keep programs which they like and what they want, and I think that's the problem. I think they should do a lot of audience ranking and audience polls to decide what programs the audience is like. Because if we're funding this thing, we should have an influence in what programs are being produced.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be down to BBC executives. It should be down to us. Technically, we paid for it.
Pretty much. Um, well, you saw Boris Johnson come out saying he would review the TV license. Now he can't do anything for another 10 years in terms of the actual license itself. Because it
No.
was enshrined into law. I can't remember. There was a big thing where there was a big like funding pledge for the next 10 years. So like it's been locked in. So like for the next 10 years of the BBC continuing as it is. So in terms of looking at the license fee, whether the government's going to fund it anymore, whether people are going to have to pay for it, that can't be changed for another 10 years. But Boris Johnson has done something else, which, while he can't just say, yeah, we're going to just stop the BBC funding, or just change it up, he's done something else which the BBC I don't think are going to like one bit, which is sort of a loophole if you think about it of how he's got around it. But as you know, currently, if you don't pay the BBC license fee, it's criminal conviction, and you can get charged as a criminal for not paying your TV license. Basically, what Boris is on about at the moment is decriminalising not paying your license fee.
Yeah, this is a massive move, and of course the BBC bit because it does prevent them from criminalising people for not paying the license. Of course, the BBC probably run on this compulsory license. You have to pay. You
Yeah.
have to pay for it, otherwise you will get fined or even in serving time for not paying your license. And Boris, I think it's a good idea. However, it's one of those things, isn't it? If you watch him, then technically you should pay for your license. If you don't watch any BBC program, then yeah, I don't see why you should pay for your license.
Yeah.
I watch BBC programs, so despite I don't like the license fee, morally I would pay for it because I watch programs which are funded by it.
Yeah.
Someone like you who probably doesn't watch as many
No.
BBC programs as me. I think you think, well, why should I fund these programs that I don't watch? Which I think's fair enough.
To be honest, I think people should have the choice whether if they're gonna use the service or not to pay for it, like Netflix and Amazon Prime. If people want to pay for it because they like the programs, then go for it. But I don't think you should be able to force it on other people. And to be honest, they can incorporate a tiny bit of advertising into the BBC to boost up their profits when other people aren't going to use the service. You've seen companies like Netflix. They run a subscription service, but actually works out cheaper than the actual BBC license fee. And just think of how much money they're actually making on a subscription model by actually providing content that people want.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think it should work. It should work much like Netflix and Amazon Prime, whereas you pay for a subscription and then you're able to watch the programs.
Yeah.
But you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to be forced. And I think that's a really good idea actually. Because then you can watch well no it is because then you can watch
BBC.
You can watch programs if you like them. If you don't like them, there's no point you paying for a subscription. You can remove a subscription as and when you like, and you can come back and start paying again as and when you like. The problem with the BBC is they're very set in their ways now. They're used to this, and of course you're going to hear loads of fear mongering from the BBC because that's all they. And as you've said, it's 10 years, so it'll be, we'll be near the end of the decade before this is sorted, and who the hell will be governing the country by that point? Hopefully Conservatives, although no one knows what will happen. So
that is true. What else was I going to say? Oh crap! I've completely forgotten what I was about to say. What? You got any more words to say on that, Tommy?
On the BBC, no, really. I think I've said my piece.
Yeah, I think you have. There was one thing I was going to add, but it's just completely gone out of my head. So I think we're going to have to leave that topic there as that. God, what was the next topic we're going to do, Tommy?
The next topic we were going to talk about, we were going to talk about Late Point.
There was one. There was
Oh.
another one in there. Labour leadership race.
Yeah. Who cares about the Labour? Emily Thornberry's still crying and saying, "Come on,
No.
guys,
She didn't
please
cry.
vote for
The news at the moment is that she sneezed in the Labour leadership race.
Whoa, some groundbreaking stuff there. To be honest,
She
I can
sneezed
see
and
why they're all a
squeezed
bit
because she's
upset.
not on the
I can
final
see,
ballot yet.
I can see why they're all a bit upset because Jeremy Corbyn is literally being teared apart in Prime Minister's question by
Yeah.
Boris Johnson. It's actually really funny to see. You know, everyone was saying Corbyn is so full of energy, and yeah,
No, he's
you
not.
could
He's
kind of
dead.
see.
He's
Well, you could kind of see after the 2017
Oh yeah,
election, he
back then,
kind of
yeah.
this new energy to him. Now he's literally just kind of sitting there, not doing anything, because Boris is just ripping him to shreds, and it's such a good thing because Corbyn ripped Theresa May to shreds, in her last couple of months as Prime Minister.
Yeah.
It's good to see it happening to him. It's very, very satisfying to see because everyone was like, Corbyn's going to be Prime Minister. He's a Prime Minister in waiting. The Guardian said he was a statesman who was going to take the nation into the future like Winston Churchill did.
Yeah.
No. He will just go down as being a former Labour leader and former leader of the opposition
Yeah. Just
who led Labour to their worst land, to their worst results since 1935.
Next topic that I want to talk about is, as you might have seen, Boris Johnson at the climate conference with David Attenborough.
Yes, I did see it.
And we're going to talk about the main pledge that he's done of on cars. Like,
Yeah. Yes, I heard about that.
Yes. So the original thing that they put in was to be carbon neutral by 2050. It was also by 2040 there would be no petrol or diesel cars being allowed to go on sale after that date. He's now changed it a bit, so it's now petrol, diesel, and electric cars are going to be banned from production after 2035. So he's brought down the year and also included hybrids into this as well now to try and try and do things for the country so we can essentially reduce the emissions we produce.
Yeah, that's I think it's a good pledge. A lot of people said the Conservatives didn't give a stuff about the environment. Well, that's obviously not true. Because a lot of people were talking about the Green New Deal, and loads of people are.
Yeah, it's
loads of
very
countries.
vague. Very vague to say Green New Deal.
Yeah,
All the left
I mean the Australian Labor Party used this idea of a Green New Deal. Labour in this country decided to use this idea of a Green New Deal, and Boris Johnson is not using a Green New Deal. He's taking constructive but realistic steps. Yeah. He's basically saying, "Oh yeah, we can be carbon neutral by 2050, and then we can lead the world in climate change." And I do think it's a good idea. You know, for all those people that said that Boris Johnson was kind of a right-wing climate change denier, well, I haven't seen that recently. If anything, he seems to be taking more notice of the environment than David Cameron and Theresa May ever did.
You see, Tommy, because he must be a right-wing monster because he's not met the demands of the Extinction Rebellion.
Yes,
to be
of course.
Carbon neutral by 2025.
Yes, because in 5 years you were going to completely change the entire nation.
We're going to ban electricity. We're going back to the Stone Ages.
Yeah, you would never be able to manage that, not
You
one
wouldn't be
bit.
allowed to go on a flight. You wouldn't be able to drive a car.
No. Honestly, this government is or so far, it looks like it's going to be a very progressive conservative government. It's not going to be significantly right wing. Many people thought it was. It looks like it's going to be a moderate, safe conservative government, which is going to pursue a lot of policy, a lot of quite radical policies actually. Which are a lot. He's even said that there might be the opportunity to do some reforms in Parliament and change certain things. Then
Mm.
that's massive. I mean, not many parties, especially conservatives, offer for reforms in parliament.
Yeah.
I personally think, and so much stuff which has been deadlocked for the past couple of years is starting to get sorted. HS2, they're now given a firm idea of what they're going to do with that.
Yeah.
The Hawaii fiasco, they're
Hawaii.
finally giving a clear say,
Yeah.
or whatever. They're finally giving clear says on what they're doing with that. He's
Yeah.
come out, hasn't he, this week and basically said to the EU, yeah, you're not calling the shots in these trade negotiations,
Yeah.
and the EU are starting to back down. And
Yeah.
I have to say, yes, this is because he's got an 80-seat majority. It has strengthened his hands so much. Although it looks like it's going to be a very radical government, it's going to pursue a lot of new things.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, if he achieves all of these policies, which makes the lives of working class voters better, then by 2024, I don't see how he couldn't get re-elected.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. God, that was the other thing. Oh god, my mind's completely dying at the moment. Of what we're going to talk about. Oh yes, of the Extinction Rebellion protests, and everyone's complaining about the UK. It's saying, oh yeah, but we need to do so much better because we're getting that. Actually, we are not the ones releasing much emissions into the world. We
Yeah.
we release like 1% of the total world emissions.
Yeah.
1%.
But as you've seen, people like Greta Thunberg, they never go after India or China.
India,
These
China, Russia, the
massive
big polluters.
are making massive, and this actually someone brought this up, and they were shot down in the comments. This was on Instagram. They were shot down in the comments for saying this. They Greta Thunberg and the Extinction Rebellion. It's not about climate change. It's about battling against the West
Mm.
because they don't like the West, even though it is actually Asia and a lot of the Middle East which are releasing more emissions than the West. The West had taken the blame for it,
Yeah.
which I find a bit ridiculous, really. I mean, as you've said, we hardly emit anything compared to other nations in the world.
Yeah.
And unless countries like China and India take it seriously, then you're not going to change everything
No.
because Extinction Rebellion is still going to blame all us. Are
Yeah,
still going to blame
compared to
India
all the
and
countries in the
America.
world, we've taken the most steps in order to like reduce emissions, improve air pollution, improve air quality. Compared to all the other nations, we're leading the way technically. A lot of,
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of the bigger countries do need to follow suit and get a grip on things. Otherwise, there
And
will
of
be some
course,
issues. But the UK is not us reducing our emissions are not going to fix. It's not going to fix anything because of how little we
no.
actually produce in the world.
And of course, probably another thing is that, like many things, Extinction Rebellion change turned out to be like a phase because
Mm.
at one point you were hearing loads about it, the trains and the
Yeah, 'cause
buses
they're
and
stopping for people to
standing
get
in
into work.
roads. Now you're not hearing hardly anything. It's
No.
like, and that's quite sad that the majority of people um are that shallow that they just have to follow through with trends. I mean, no offense, I get some of the extinct. I have more respect if you're a member of Extinction of Rebellion and you're very passionate about it, then I have respect for you.
Oh
If
yeah.
you're just doing it because everyone else is doing it, then I don't have as much respect for you because you don't actually believe in anything. You have no morals, no principles.
No.
You're just following what everyone else is. Honestly, I think we do need to do something about climate change. I think our country is the right approach. However, unless you get massive nations like China and India on side, they're never going to change anything.
No.
That is the truth.
Hmm. Yeah, pretty much. And like with the Extinction Rebellion, yeah, I of course I agree with people having the right to protest and stuff and voicing their opinions, and that of course should never be stopped. But what I disagree with is some of the tactics Extinction Rebellion has used, such as completely trying to ground London to a halt, trying to stop people, just normal people, just from getting to work. People has lost money because they couldn't get to a job. Yeah, like they've stopped a lot of people, and quite frankly, a lot of the times they've been ruining people's livelihoods of just trying to make a basic living.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Our country's on the right track, personally speaking. I think our country's on the right track.
Yeah,
And a lot of people are saying it's going to be the start of the Roaring Twenties. Well, from the outset, the 2020s have gotten off to a pretty good start. Especially as I think we're all just relieved that the deadline, which kind of ended this decade, is finally over. Because as we've said numerous times, for 3 years we've been stuck in deadlock.
Yeah.
And it's just no one thought there'd ever be an end, and it has been a crisis. I think when people talk about this in the future, and historians look back, and it's going to be taught in schools, it will be considered a parliament like a national crisis.
Yeah.
The Brexit crisis, when just nothing was getting sorted, there was so much deadlock, and we are recovering because we've had 3 years of incompetent and useless government, and partly to blame for Theresa May and the Conservatives. However, Labour and the Liberal Democrats all take their fair share of the blame as well for the dead caused in Parliament. And now we got a strong Conservative government which is delivering on what it was elected to do. And not only get Brexit done, however, do numerous other things which aren't as far right as some people in Labour claimed they were.
No, they got to try and win the argument somehow, though, haven't they?
Yeah, they got to try. Lesson.
Yeah, they've got to try. So I think that concludes what we're going to do today because of time constraints. There is still that big topic I want to get into, but when we got more time,
we're still waiting for that.
Yeah, we're going to need like half an hour for that, which we don't actually have. So, we've covered some good topics as well. I think we've had some good discussions today.
Yes,
we've done at least 3 topics.
Apart from Matthew's memory kind of fading every now and then.
Yeah, something like that.
We should write them down. We should definitely write them down.
Write our points down, yes.
Yes.
Anyway, guys, this is where we're going to conclude today's TPN podcast. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe, give it a like, comment what you think down in the comments down below, and we will return next week, hopefully.
Yep. See ya.
Right. Goodbye, everyone. We'll catch you soon.